Michael Jackson was widely recognized as the second most popular person who ever lived. His influence was universally known among millions in every continent on Earth. His combination of being a talented musician and entertainer at the same time is what drove the hearts of millions to follow his work and to love his music. Having suffered a rough upbringing at the hands of an abusive father, combined with the pressure of being a child star, music became something of a driving force and a place where he found joy, and in turn was able to spread that joy to millions of other people. But what does it take to really dominate the hearts of fans and affect them in a way that causes them to scream, convulse, and even pass out at the mere presence of their favorite artist? Michael Jackson was relatively influenced by the teachings of Hermeticism, and more specifically the guidelines outlined in these two books here, Magic, Book 4, and 777. He even went as far as including many of these principles such as the universal consciousness, energy and vibrations, divine causality, and the connection between the cosmic and personal realms. It is alleged that Jackson got some of his hit songs from what he calls the Giving Tree. In Magic Book 4, it outlines 3 methods of invocation: drama, devotion, and calling forth. These techniques are used to identify with said entity to achieve a desired goal. In the case of devotion, the user would surrender all irrelevant parts of oneself and allow the personality of the invoked entity to take the lead of one's psyche and activate a certain part of the user that otherwise would not be naturally accessible, whether this is confidence, intelligence, hidden talents, or just an overall magnification of the user's abilities that are already there. Calling forth is similar to the first method, but more focused on one specific desired trait without the need of full surrender. And drama. The user uses affectation to assume the personality of another using mimic speech patterns, gestures, posture, and imagination. This is to achieve a rapid transformation that erases the distinction between actor and character, achieving complete identification with said invoked presence. Some performers or influencers can do a performance and leave the crowd satisfied and entertained, but relatively normal in all other aspects. But others can cause their followers to pass out, not be able to control themselves at just the very sight of the person. Many times, this is because the user has some help from a familiar spirit that resonates with the audience on a personal level. If you can captivate an audience, you can control them to the point where whatever you release, whatever product you promote, whatever ideology you want them to follow, you can easily do that with these esoteric principles. And I'm just using music for this example, but many influential figures in many other industries also use these esoteric principles. There's an old saying that goes, the heroes and the villains of our world all utilize the spiritual realm in their daily lives to achieve their goals. It's just the fools in the middle who rely on their own strength entirely. These esoteric principles have long been used by self-determined individuals to achieve their goals, often those who display psychopathic traits and who prioritize success and recognition over all else in the world. The National Socialist Party is a good example of this. While rather an extreme example, the SS wasn't just a band of military officials and intelligence officers with a chip on their shoulders and a superiority complex, but instead a movement that has its roots in runic magic and Germanic mysticism. Groups like the Thule Society were early sponsors of the Nazi regime and even provided funding for its early years. Key figures such as Rudolf von Sebentendorf and Guido von List. These early figures promoted ideas such as Aryan supremacy and other Aristotelical ideas. The Third Reich long had plans to replace the world's main religions with pagan-style Germanic faith, rooted in blood mythology, sun worship, and Aryan mysticism. According to Albert Speer, Hitler's architect, he said, if the Nazis had won, of course things on the surface would eventually have settled down to an appearance of normality, but they would be living in a nightmare, buried in a graveyard of human hope and dignity, trapped in a hell they would never recognize. Beginning in the 1960s, the CIA began Project MK Often, which was a project aimed at consulting experts in various fields of esoteric practices and experimenting with harnessing these abilities for use in military operations and for use on the general population. While this project was the precursor to other experimental works like MK Search, many of the findings were developed to be used in modern culture today. For example, things like suggestive programming, harnessing binaural beats, and the effects of weaponizing psychological drugs. It was this same ancient knowledge that was lost at the time of the flood and regained once again. Many practitioners will argue that the use of such esoteric practices are harmless and on par with many of the world's other more mainstream religions. But it is evident that the left-hand path traditions prioritize self above everything else. These belief systems teach that spirituality is found within, and right and wrong is overall subjective for the most part. Whereas in Christianity, self at times is laid aside for the holistic and perfect will of God. This verse found in Matthew 16 says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up the cross, and follow me." The self should be crucified, because by default there is not much, if any, good in humanity alone. When comparing us to God's standard, there is no good at all. Spiritual authority is granted through faith, obedience, and revelation, not through ritualistic knowledge or magical systems. The perfect knowledge of God lines up with the universal laws. This verse sums it up very well. The blessing of the Lord brings wealth, without pain and toil. If you look at the life of many left-hand path practitioners, many, if not all, accounts listed here, their lives were plagued with extreme hardship. The power and success came at a great cost to their psychological state, to their health, to their legacy, and ultimately to their afterlife. The only true path that does not come at a great cost is through the guidelines of God.